Hi my bookworms, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing well. So today I'm finally doing my April wrap up, so without further ado, let's get straight into the video and see what books I read and my thoughts on them. So April, I read 18 books, but I can tell you now, let's just get the elephant out of the room, April was a horrendous month. You probably would have saw that there was no 12 book challenge vlog. You probably would have saw there was no Fairy Loot vlog because I didn't do them. And I did actually read a 12 book challenge book. We'll get to that. I didn't even bother doing the Fairy Loot. I did start reading the book, but I started reading Daughter of the Moon Goddess. I'm not saying I hate it. I'm not saying I'm not enjoying it. But it's extremely descriptive. It's like very descriptive. It's very descriptive, and I wasn't in the mood for it. And the reason behind it is because April, I haven't been feeling very well. The start of April, I had all of these plans. I was going to pretty much vlog every week if I could. I had all of these readathons that I wanted to do, and it just was a disaster basically. So the beginning of April I absolutely crashed. I've been complaining that I've been feeling very lethargic, I've had really bad fatigue, and that I'm just absolutely exhausted, keep getting headaches. I've been sleeping, but even the sleeping's not helping. And basically the beginning of April I just crashed. I was asleep for 24 hours. I literally got up to go to the toilet once, and I think I ended up having something to eat around 8 o'clock at night, but I was asleep. Lucky enough Alice was at her dad's that weekend, so it didn't matter. But I haven't done that in a very long time. The last time I did that was when I was flaring really badly with my Crohn's. So the fact that I just slept for nearly 24 hours straight was quite worrying, but it helped. So that happened, and then literally on a Sunday I started feeling a bit okay. I felt rested. I was still tired, but nothing nasty. I actually had some energy in there. Alice came home. We all had a roast dinner. Now, with my Crohn's, I noticed there's some trigger food for me that just does not sit well with me. There was one particular food that I've been oohing and ahhing, am I triggered by it? Am I not? We ended up having that as roast dinner. We had roast pork. It's very clear that pork is a no-no for me, because for 3 days I was in absolute agony with my stomach. I honestly got really worried, thinking, has this just made me completely flare out again with my Crohn's, when I'm currently in remission? So I'm like, I don't want to get poorly again. Give me at least 10 years and then I can get poorly again, sort of thing. So I started panicking. I was bonding with the toilet as well. And when I have a Crohn's flare, or when my Crohn's acts up, basically my body shuts down. So all my body wants to do is sleep. It doesn't want to do anything. It pretty much doesn't let me do anything. It makes all my organs work, but it makes it work very minimal. So I ended up again sleeping for 3 days straight. I didn't really eat much. Like I said, was bonding to the toilet, and obviously when you're not drinking, you're eating much and you're going to the toilet a lot, you kind of get dehydrated. So that was all happening. Thankfully, come Thursday I started feeling better and all that, and I was like, okay, finally. And so I started reading, and I decided that I was just going to completely go against my TBR. Basically, the beginning of April was meant to be Spooktober. I read 3 books. Was it 3 books? Yes, I read 3 books. I think. Yes, I think it was 3. I think I read 3 books. That was in the prompts. Gave up because literally I had 2 books left and I only had 2 days, and I was not in that speedy reading mood that I could do it. So I ended up going off kilter. I ended up picking books that weren't even on my TBR, but I was like, I just want to read them. Basically, you will see in a bit that I ended up reading the books that were easy, that there wasn't so much brain power to do, because I at this point had no oomph to read something really, really difficult. I was just I didn't want to read a book that was first in a fantasy series, because I knew there'd be lots of world building. I didn't really want to read a book that was fantasy that had a lot of thought process. I just wanted to read something extremely easy, and so that's what I did. Also, when I finally did get my reading mojo back, it was Easter half term, and I had 2 weeks with my daughter, and I was just like, oh, I kind of thought it was the end of April. I didn't realise that it was more at the beginning, so that was interesting. So obviously my reading was more in the evening because I was doing things with my daughter and everything. So 18 books is blooming amazing, because quite frankly, at one point it was just going to be 3 books. So I'm quite glad that we got there. But I did complete Realm of On. Like, I did what I wanted to do. I didn't end up doing Spooktober. I certainly didn't do Spring Fling-a-Ween because, you know, I gave up by this point. So at least we did one readathon, and technically that readathon was very much whatever book you read, if you can fit it in any of the prompts, perfect. So let's get on to the book. So I'm going to go on to, well, I did own these books, but then, apart from one, but I did own these books, but I got rid of them because we had a big charity to pick up stuff we didn't want, so I ended up getting rid of those books. I wasn't going to keep them anyway. So my lowest score. So on Goodreads, I gave it 1 star. On Storygraph, I gave it 0.5. And that was Stay With Me by Nicole Fiorina. So this was a 12-book challenge book. It wasn't, no, because technically the book was actually going to be Raven Boys. That was the book that I was actually going to read, and I started reading it, and I just was not vibing with it. I've actually unhauled it now because I was like, do you know what? It's been on my shelf for so long. If I'm not going to read it now, I'm not going to read it ever. The same as with Nevernight. I ended up unhauling that because I did start reading that. It was just too complicated for me. I wasn't very keen on it, so I ended up hauling that. I thought might as well. So it was meant to be Raven Boys. I changed my mind. Lucky enough, I had all of the recommendations. I kept it on my notes purely because I thought, should I not like a book, I can like change it out for another book that was recommended to me. And Stay With Me was recommended to me. It was on Kindle Unlimited, so I thought perfect, because at the minute I had been reading a lot of Kindle Unlimited books and they were all been 5 stars. So I was kind of like, okay, this is going to be brilliant. It wasn't a 5 stars. And this book, I think, might have put me in a tiny bit of a slump because I did not want to read anything after that book, because it was just, there was just so many things wrong. The thing is, right, I actually did vlog this. I vlogged it, and it was over an hour long, even editing it, because I just ranted and I ended up giving up. I was like, I cannot be asked to edit all of that. And it's still an hour long, and it's just basically me completely trashing this book. Basically, this book follows our main character, Mia, who supposedly has is supposedly a sociopath. She has no emotions, no feelings, and basically her dad and her stepmom have had completely enough of her. She ended up doing something, and her stepmom called the police. The police arrested her. Her stepmom didn't want to drop charges on her. She wanted something actually done, so they were like, right, you're going to go in a mental health hospital. Her father was like, no, I'll do anything. She doesn't need to go there. And I think it made me curious for a while why her dad didn't want her to go there, but as we got into the book, I kind of understood why, because he knew she actually, like, the problems that she has was self-inflicted rather than actually whatever. So she ends up going to this university in England, which is a university where they can like get taught and they get like degrees in that, but it's for people who have got mental health illnesses. And I was like, okay, this sounds interesting. We've got that. We've also got a potential that she falls in love with someone and has a relationship even though she's supposed to be a sociopath with no emotions. So I was like, how does that work? So it turns out that she isn't a sociopath. She has all these things, but basically something happened to her and she ended up completely getting rid of all of the feelings she had, and she managed to put a wall up, and for 10 years nothing could go down. But this particular boy came along and just smashed all those walls apart. So it turned out that she got raped at 8 years old. She was raped for a year by her uncle, and her mother and father didn't do anything about it. It happened at night, but she screamed, she made noise. The uncle didn't even stop her making noise because he liked her struggling, kind of thing. And whether her parents just did hear and they didn't know what to do, or whether they were just completely blind and deaf to it all, I have no idea. But she ended up taking it out on her own hands, and she stole one of her father's guns and she shot her uncle. Obviously it all came out to her parents that she was gotten raped. Her mum felt so guilty that she couldn't protect her or anything, that she committed suicide. And basically when that happened, her daughter Mia had started putting all those walls up so she could never feel again. So if anything bad happened to her, she couldn't feel, basically. That was like her thought process, her safety net and all of that. So we had that, and she basically saw her mum and she committed suicide. Dad came back home from being working away, assumed that for the minute, thought his daughter had killed her, find out the truth or not, and then everything just went to pot. So instead of him going and getting her help with, with being a rape, with the rape and the PTSD that clearly she had, he just stopped being a parent. So we had that really peeved me off, because this was just a parent who couldn't be bothered to try and help and just dumped her to people to try and sort her out, and then we had the mental health representation. I thought was absolutely disgusting. We even had one bit, there was a boy there, and we find out a boy was there in this university / mental health hospital, but not. It pretty much was like a mental health prison, basically. They had a curfew. They weren't allowed to go out. They all had to wear these certain things. They got locked in their rooms, and basically, if they did something wrong, they would go into the actual mental health hospital and all of that. There was this one kid who was there, and he was there purely because he was gay, and his father was a priest, so he shoved him there to try and get the gay out of him. And I was just like, the fact that this unit, this mental health university, whatever you want to call it, I'm calling it a mental health prison because of what it was, you would have thought they would turn away and say, that is not a problem, that is just, emotions, you're allowed to love whoever you hell you were, blah, blah, blah. We didn't even get that. And there was group therapy, and the therapist there, by one point, ended up turning around to Maya and saying, tell us what happened to you. And she just finally found out what happened, because she completely forgot it as well. She completely got rid of all the emotions, and the memory that she forgot was only when she was shoved into the actual mental health unit. And yeah, it's just, I hated the mental health rep. I hated the therapy, apart from one therapist, which was the one-to-one. She was the only one that was decent. The rest, I was just like, what the actual fuck, basically. And I was just like, no. I ended up reading it because I wanted to know how it ended, and it ended absolutely stupid in the end. And I was just like, no. So the only reason why it got, it wasn't a DNF, basically, was because I was curious to see how it ended, and I was interested in the fact that we had, the characters were done really well. That was it. It was, I do not recommend it. I'm sorry to the person who recommended it to me. I don't understand why it would have been recommended. I thought the representation was appalling, and I don't agree with it. And yeah. Then we were on to 2 stars, which was Horrorstor by Grady Hendrix. I'm sorry to everyone who loves this book. I'm sorry to everyone who loves this author. I genuinely think this is not an author for me. I tried the Summoner's Guide book club, that flipping one that I could never get right. I tried that. I had about a third of the book left, but I just did not like how the author writes women. I just really didn't, and I just couldn't get past that, and I just gave up. Horrorstor, I was expecting to be completely freaked out. The reason why it's got 2 stars and not a 1 or even possibly a DNF, the only reason why it's got that is because I genuinely like the fact that it was pretty much like an IKEA catalogue. I like the fact that it was set in a IKEA store, just not. It was a cheaper version of it. I really liked that. Which is hence why it's got the 2 stars. I was just bored. There was nothing scary. I'm just getting into horror. And at the minute, I'm just there thinking, the horrors that I've read haven't really given me the full creep factor. And I'm kind of feeling like I'm reading the wrong kind of horror. It's very clear that I shouldn't be reading anything YA or anything ghosty. I genuinely need to read something a bit more hardcore. I think I need to start reading Stephen King's horror books, because I genuinely think I am going to get messed up in the head and freaked out. So yeah, it bored me. I did skim read at some point. I kind of did like the ending. I kind of liked how it ended, and then these 2 characters went back to try and find the person who was missing and try and go back and get it. I quite like that. It ended in a way that, there could be maybe another book sort of thing. But there was nothing spooky about it. It was very obvious, you know, I could see where everything was sort of going. I wasn't overly bothered by the characters, even like the main character. I wasn't overly bothered by her, and I was just like, oh, I don't get the fuss. I wasn't really scared over it, and I wanted to be scared. So yeah. For 3 stars, I read Fear Street: The Beginning by R.L. Stine, which is like 4 books in one. So 2 books out of the 4 I liked, hence why I've given it 3 stars, because I gave both those 2 books 3 stars. The other 2 books I gave 1 stars because I was like, what the load of crap, there's a fly in my room, what a load of crap that was. I didn't realise that this was YA. I think if I was aware this was YA, I probably wouldn't have gone for it. So this was obviously for one of the prompts in Spooktober. I think if I knew it was YA, like technically I got it from a YA shelf, but I kind of was just like, is it, isn't it? I should have double checked, but I didn't. But it wasn't scary. Like there's 2 books that I liked. I wasn't fully scared, but it gave me a little bit of a, ooh, what's going to happen? I got a bit like, I don't know where this is going to end, and that's why they got those 3 stars. The other 2 books, I saw what was coming. I did not care for the whiny teenagers, and I was just like, there is nothing scary about it, because it wasn't. Like, I kind of went with Fear Street was going to be literally a, you know, ghosts, anything like that, but it actually turns out it's just messed up people doing this stuff. And I was just like, oh. Like, I you know, don't get me wrong, but sometimes horror books you have the messed up people behind it all, and it's not really ghosts or anything like that. But I do like the horror books where we've got supernatural elements that make you fucking scared and want to pee your pants. And I need to find books that give me that, because clearly the soft horror is not my jam. So 3 stars purely because of 2 books that I did like, that I gave 3 stars. You know, I could have technically just read those 2 books, not bothered with the others, but since it was the first one I didn't like, I liked the second one, the third one I didn't like, the fourth one I did, I think, oh, it might have been the second and third books I liked, and the first of all, I can't actually remember now. So yeah, I got 3 stars. 4 stars was The Woods Are Always Watching by Stephanie Perkins. Again, this was for one of the prompts in Spooktober. I like Stephanie Perkins. I read There's Someone Inside Your House and absolutely loved it. That was a serial killer book. Really loved it. I still want to watch the movie. I don't actually know if it's still on Netflix or not, but I really wanted to watch the movie just to see how it compared. But I absolutely loved that book. Like, I didn't see it coming. It did mess my head psychologically, purely because there were like things moving, things that were missing, and I was just like, oh, what's going on? Like I don't like that, because it made me like sort of think, right, what's going on is like, you know, for a while I was like, is there like it sort of gave me a spook factor, thinking there might be a ghost, and then it turned out it was actually a student, and when we found out why, and it was also gory as hell. The Woods Are Always Watching, I was a little bit like, get to the point. So it's 2 girls decided to like hike and go camping, because one of the girls was going to university, but it was outside, so they wanted to have one last big thing together as best friends, because they knew things were going to change. They obviously were hiking and all that. This one particular girl is just nervous as hell. Her father died, so she's got some, like, I would say, some grieving problems and all that. Basically, she's just a little bit too paranoid, but in hindsight I can understand why she was. Long story cut short, these 2 girls ended up having a massive big argument, and they ended up walking off. They ended up like having a thing. They ended up going to this walk, and one of the girls was like, "Is this the way?" And all that. The other one's, "No, it's not. Let's just go back," and all that. Blah blah blah. And then one of the girls basically falls, and she breaks her leg in this big massive hole thing, and like, I mean, her like bone is sticking out. So the other girl's like, I'm going to find something. I'm going to head back, get to the car, I'm going to find something. And then as that's happening, this bloke comes along, finds the friend in the hole, and he says, oh, I'll go and help. Turns out that there were 2 men that were serial killers and have been killing lots of campers and that for quite a while. But, you know, no one knew who they were, because they were very good at hiding it. And they made this big hole to try and get people falling. So while this girl was in the hole here, this bloke obviously wasn't helping her, and then the other friend found the other guy, and she thought he was going to help her, and then he wasn't. He was about to shoot her. Oh yeah, we had all of that, and it got to the point where I was like, okay, this is not really spooky. Like, we know who the killers are. It was very obvious by like the third into the book. So I was just like, okay. How it ended was basically these men ended up getting mauled by a bear, and the girls managed to get out, and I was just like, okay. But it ended up going, so one of the girls was severely asthmatic and she didn't have her inhaler, so she ended up getting extremely, extremely poorly right at the end, very close to death's door, because she was having a horrendous asthma attack. And it's funny because I completely resonated with that, because I'm asthmatic, I have been there, and I know how bad it can get. Like, I know from, if you have your inhalers, if you have a bad chest, your inhalers help, but if you've not had it, and you've got nothing to help relieve it, it can get drastically bad very quickly, and you can get poorly very quickly, and if you don't get any help, you can die. Like, asthma is a very quick killer, and some people don't think that, but I've even read a non-fiction book about it saying that, you know, asthmatics, you know, if you don't have your inhalers in hand, or if you're not regularly on your inhalers, if you have a bad asthma attack, you could easily lose your life very quickly, and you would have never expected that to happen. So I could see it was that asthma bit was very believable, because I thought, no, I know that for what's happened. The other girl had a complete broken foot with her thing going through, very probably possible that she's going to lose her leg, and she lost a hand. She ended up getting shot in the hand, and she lost it there. So in the end, she was the one who drove them out. So she's got a complete broken foot hanging off, no hand. I was just like, well, it was good, but it was slow at the beginning, and it was you knew exactly who the killers are, and I didn't exactly know how they were going to get out, but it was obvious that they were. So when I compare that to the first book, that there's someone inside your house, like the actual creepy factor and the fact that I didn't know what was going to happen in that book, this one, it didn't. It was just like these serial messed up killers. It was gory, yes, and it had that you know, they were in a deserted place, but I knew how it was all going to go. I knew how it was going to end. So yeah. Next we have Slow Horses, which was 4 stars by Mick Herron. That was a book for Tandem Collective read along. The first half of that book, I'm not going to lie, it was boring. I was just like, oh, like, get on with it. The second half really picked up. I love the fact that we actually had MI5 being baddies, that they actually were the ones who set up this kidnapping, and it was basically their way, because they were fed up with people being really negative about them, so they decided to set this kidnapping situation up, and they were going to be the heroes and then get the limelight again to say that they're really good and blah blah blah. And it all went to pot, so they decided to pin it on the Slow Horses, but obviously they saw how it was coming, so like, it ended in a way where you thought they were going to actually dob the MI5 in and get them in trouble and like get them to get their jobs back, but in the end they actually did it so it was blackmailing. So actually the Slow Horses are now, like, MI5 are now in Slow Horses' pocket, and if they basically cock up, don't do as they're told, they'll dob them in, because they've got all of the proof. So I quite like how that ended, and obviously there is a series, and Tandem Collective very lovely gave me the second book in the series, so I certainly would like to read that and see how that pans out. But it did take a while for me to enjoy the book. It did take me a while to sort of like it. Like the first chapter in the book was absolutely outstanding. I thought, oh my god, that was brilliant, and so I was like, oh, if this carries on like this, it's gonna be 5 stars. But then it got really slow, and it got a bit like I didn't like any of the characters, and I was just like, okay. And then thankfully it did pick up, and like how it all, like, it got really fast paced, and how everything ends as well was like, oh, I quite like it. I think if the first half was, you know, quick paced and carried on being like what it was at the start, I probably would have given this 5 stars. But that's fine. Also, 4 stars, another Tandem Collective read along, was Space Hopper by Helen Fisher. This is a book about a woman called Faye whose mother passed away at, I think she was 8, and she's just grieving. She really misses her mother and all of that, and basically one day like her 2 children basically found this space hopper box, and they wanted to play with it and all of that, and she was like, no, that, you know, that's special to me, it's a memory from my mother and all that. And so she went to take it back into the attic and put it somewhere where no one would chuck it and all that. And I don't know what made her do it, but she ended up getting into the box. She obviously carries around this photo of her as a child, and her mum took it, like I think probably the year of her mother dying or something, I'm not 100% sure. And for however it happened, but basically she goes in this space hopper box and she time travels back to the day this picture was taken, and it was like, you know, is that same place that she was in the photo that she's got, and she realizes for however it is that this space hopper box can time travel her back to see her mother. So she ends up going back a few times to see her mum. Her mum obviously still has little Faye, and like they become really good friends. And basically her mum turned around to older Faye saying, look, I want you to be in my daughter's life. I have a feeling that I'm not going to be there for her life for long. You know, I trust you, blah, blah, blah. And she, like, obviously older Faye was like, I can't, like, she can't, like, she is Faye and all that. So it was just to do with that. It was to do with grief and obviously finding answers, like, to who her mum really was. Like, she really learned who her mum was, and it was like she understood her mum even more than she did as a child. It's very sweet and lovely, and it just really does really well with grief and what you would do to just have that time back with the person you've lost. The ending I did not expect and I love. So basically Faye finally tells her husband what's going on, and like she's obviously very aware that I think she sort of also realised that whatever she does back in the past actually changes what happens, sort of thing. So it comes clear that she needs to move on, and so like she said goodbye to her mum in the past, and they basically went to get rid of the space hopper box so she can't go back in time. And so they get rid of it in like this beach that she loves and all of that, and space hopper box. But in the past, Faye's mum got into a space hopper box and then went into Faye now, and she came out of the box in the water, so her husband obviously took her out. By this point, the box is completely wrecked, sunk, you know, can't ever be used, and Faye's mum's there. So it ended up being what Faye did changed the thing. So because her mum, so she assumed her mum died as a kid. That's what they said. She assumed her mum died. It actually turned out that her mum didn't die. Her mum went into the future, but because the space hopper box ended up getting ruined, she couldn't go back. So young Faye assumed her mum was dead, but actually now older Faye, her mum's back. So it actually ended really interesting. It's a very good take on time travelling and a bit of magical realism. But it was also one of those books like I'm thinking, like, it's lovely, it's sweet, but I was also like, I don't think that would ever happen. Like, it would be lovely to happen, but it was very much, yeah, no, that would never happen. But it was really good. Like, there was, like, you know, mother and daughter relationship stuff in here really resonated with me and my mum and even my daughter. And it is very clear, like, you know, when you lose someone at such a young age, or whatever age you are, like, especially your parents and stuff, it is, you do grieve. So I you know, it was a really good book. I think for me, the reason why I wasn't 5 stars is the pacing was slow, and I am someone who prefers medium to fast-paced books. Like, when it's slow books, it takes me so long to read them, just because it, you know, it hasn't got that I want to keep turning the page. I think what helped with this book as well is we actually had interactive prompts. So now and then we got told to open past one, and it all was like little tiny little nostalgia things that was on in this book, because obviously we were going back in the 70s, and I think that really helped me enjoy the book even more as well. So Tandem Collective, you need to do more of them in my opinion. Then we're on to 5 stars. So the 5 stars that I'm going to talk about are the ones that are on my Kindle, and then I'll talk about the ones that are here. So basically the 5-star books, there's 3, they're part of a series. I ended up starting to read the first 3 books of the Zodiac Academy. So I read the Zodiac Academy The Awakening, which was book 1, book 2 was Ruthless Fae, and book 3 was The Reckoning, and that was by Suzanne Valenti and Caroline Peckham. I love this series. I am planning to carry on reading this series for this month in May. I don't know what it is about this series that I love, but it's just so easy to read. It's such a quick read. Like, I read all these 3 books in a day. So literally 3 days, 3 books. Technically 1 day was 2 books actually, if I really go into it. I think I managed to read 2 books in 1 day. but they're such quick reads. And the first book I wasn't 100% sure, because it is a bully romance book as well. Like, it's a fantasy romance, but the romance is a bully romance. And the first book I wasn't 100% sure whether I liked because of the bullying, because these boys were horrendous. And I was just like, oh my god, like, there's bullying and there's outright being atrocious, and they were. Like, some of the things they did, like the drowning bit and cutting, like the drowning bit actually was the most that got me. I thought, ugh, this is just horrible. And like, at the same time, these boys liked the twins, and I was just like, you're really messing it up. Basically, the story is, we've got these, hang on, how many were they? 1, 2, 3. Yeah, there's these 4 heirs, which if they pass Zodiac Academy and get all their powers and all that, they can take over the throne. But it turns out that they are now in competition, because Tori and Darcy, who believed they were humans and they believed that their parents died in the fire and all that, find out that actually they are Fae. And they also found out they are royal Fae, because their parents were the king and queen to this whole Fae world, but they died. And basically her mother, the twins' mother, swapped the twins around. So they're like changelings per se. So basically there were human twins that lived in the Fae world, and they, she made them out that they were Fae, and the actual Fae twins were in a human world that believed they were human. So they're changelings in the sense that they got swapped around. The reason why it happened was the mother was protecting her twin girls, because her husband was a complete psychopath kind of thing. Anyway, they end up finding out they're Fae by this bloke called Orion, who is one of the teachers at Zodiac Academy, and he's been tasked to find the twins to take them to Academy, because they were showing that their powers were coming out. So they end up going to Zodiac Academy. They had the awakening, so they found out that they were Fae. So most Fae, if they're lucky, can possess 2 powers, like elemental powers. The twins had all 4 or 5. I can't remember how many elemental. Fire, air, water, earth. 4 elemental powers. So it showed that they were the most powerful in a sense of powers. But however, they didn't know what their order was, so they didn't know what their like shape-shifting ability was. They did find out in the 3rd book, in the Reckoning, and so it turns out that they're actually phoenixes, which are very rare and very powerful. So obviously throughout the 3 books, they're finding out who they are, like they're Fae. They found out that they are also in a run-on for the throne, so that's obviously them versus the heirs. Life is not made easy for him by these heirs. Are pretty much trying to take these girls and not take the throne. And they keep saying throughout, apart from the last book, the first 2 books, they say, we don't want the throne, we don't want the crown, we generally just want our inheritance that we can't get until we finish the academy. And they just wanted to also learn their powers, because obviously for 18 years of their life they believed they were humans. It turns out that they got powers. It turns out that they were very powerful. So for one of the twins, Tori, she's more powerful in fire, whereas Darcy, the other twin, is more powerful with air and earth sort of thing. There is a romance. So for Darcy, it's clear that her and Orion, they've got like a little forbidden romance. He's a teacher, she's a student, I have a feeling, knowing what Fae is all like the whole story with Fae is always the same. I think Darcy and Orion might be mates. So I'm wondering when that will happen. It's very clear that Tori has got 2. So Caleb is going on. The Fae, they're Fae, but they also have the so for example, Darius is a dragon, Orion's a vampire, Caleb's a vampire, Seb is a wolf, and Max is a siren. So they're Fae, but they've got like those supernatural beings. And Tori and Darcy in the end are going to be phoenixes. So Caleb has decided to make Tori his like blood bank sort of thing, so he feeds off her, but they've sort of also got a bit of a romance bit there, like they slept together, and Caleb does like her, but obviously he's also meant to be her enemy. Orion and Darcy, they've had a moment that they both like, we can't do this, but I think there might be mates. However, Tori and Darius are like sworn enemies. They hate each other, but they're also very drawn to each other, and basically Darius pretty much knows that Tori won't like him anything more than enemies, so he decides just to keep on bullying her, which is what's making her hate him. Like, if he actually was nice to her, she probably would choose him. So we have that. I don't particularly like the bullying. The first book was so uncomfortable, and then Ruthless Bay, it got a tiny bit better, but I was just like, oh my god, like, it's one of those books where if you can get past the bullying, you're fine. And the first book, I got used to it, and I was just like, actually, you know, I am enjoying it. And as I get into the book, you do actually start understanding the boys. Like, we're getting a bit more of the boys' point of view from like book 3 and going on. And I also know there is a book where it goes back to the Awakening, but it's the boys' POV, and it just explains why they're doing what they do. And I've seen some of the reviews, and people say once you've read that, you understand the bullying a bit more. And you do, as you're going on, your understanding, because I know full well Darius's father, if he takes the throne, it's going to go completely awful. Hence why Darius wants to take the throne, because he won't do all these nasty things that his dad's got planned. Like, he will make it better, but he doesn't want anyone else to take it because he thinks it's his role, and he thinks that, I think he just believes that everyone else might take the throne and do something bad. So I kind of understand why Darius is the way he is, but it's very clear that the twins aren't exactly gonna, you know, do stuff nasty. So yeah, I absolutely love this series. 5 stars. It's just such an easy, quick read. Like, there is world building, but it's not like so descriptive, in my opinion. And as you get into the series, you're not getting so much world building in that sense. You just, because you already know what's going on. I just love it. I love all of the characters. Like, my favourites are definitely the twins. Their banter and their, like, it's just fantastic. Like the twins together are so close, but then it's nice to have them still quite independent and have their own sort of personalities and not the same. Like, Tori's more of a badass, Darcy's more of a, not a goody two shoes, but she's more not as, like, you know, she's a bit nicer, I suppose. I love the banter between the twins and the heirs. I do like the little bit of romance that's happening. Like, Orion and Darcy are sweethearts, and I am so rooting for them, and I really hope that I am correct and they do become mates, because I think that's going to be fantastic. Tori, Darius and Caleb, that love triangle, I love triangles, so I'm not going to complain about it. I just don't know which one I like. Like, I kind of can start understanding where Darius is coming from, but he is an absolute massive arsehole, whereas Caleb sort of has put his hands up and said, look, I realised that I went too far. I do like you. Let's do a truce. So I kind of like the fact that he owns it. But yeah. So that's 5 stars. I blooming love it. And then we're on to the books. Bertie by Colleen Hoover. Wow. This is my first ever Colleen Hoover book. It's certainly not going to be my last, because I definitely want to read every book that she's written. This was amazing. I'm not going to go into why this is amazing, because I don't want to spoil it, because, you know, not many, I know people have read it. I want everyone to read it, so I don't want to spoil it for you, but this was fantastic. I did not know that a thriller romance was a thing. I want to read more thriller romances. The ending, like, this book is one of those books that makes you wonder who was on it. Was, like, it basically ends, I think I can, yeah, let me find it. No matter which way I look at it, it's clear that Verity was a master at manipulating the truth. The only question that remains is, which truth was she manipulating? Which literally was me. When I finished this book, I could not work out what truth Verity was. Like, did she do this? Did she not do this? I had no idea. And still to this day, I'm thinking about this book. Like, it's been weeks now since I read this book, and I still think about this book, and I still had that question of what was true. And it is like, you read this book and you generally have no idea, and I still don't. I don't know who to believe, and I love that. I love it when a book keeps making you think, and a book that stays in your head weeks later. Fantastic. If you haven't read it, bloody read it, because you won't be disappointed. I then, after I read that, was like, I want to continue reading some of her books, so I decided to read Ugly Love, Second Chance Romance. Am I right? Is it a Second Chance Romance? No, I don't think it was. I can't remember what trope this is. Either way, I absolutely loved it. I absolutely sobbed like people said this book would make you cry, and I got there and I was like, I'm not crying, like where's the thing? And then I got to one point and I was a mess. I was an absolute mess. I actually documented some of the stuff on my stories. I also have, I don't know whether you can see, but as you can see, I have pretty much dog-eared quite a lot of things in this book that I loved. It was just, it was heartbreaking, and then it was absolutely heartwarming at the same time. And I couldn't help love our characters, Tate and Miles. I just, I've fallen in love with Conan Hoover's books. Like I love the way she writes. I want to read It Ends With Us, which is the other Conan Hoover book that I own. I don't own any of the others apart from I've got a couple on my Kindle. I want to read that, but I know a lot of people say that's the most heartbreaking and sobbing book. So I'm like, okay, like I need to put myself in a sad girl moment to probably read it. But absolutely love Conan Hoover. Definitely going to be reading more of her books because I just love her books, and I would love her to do more thriller romances because Verity is just up there for me. I then read Obsidio, which is the third book in the Illuminae Files by Amy Kaufman and Joe Christoph. Read this and listened to it on audiobook. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. I'm going to tell you now, I am not usually a fan of sci-fi. After reading this series, I want to read sci-fi. Like, I certainly have found that sci-fi with space opera and different sort of sub-genres in it are my thing. I love this series. This book was absolutely amazing. The conclusion and everything was brilliant. I was on the edge of my seat. I genuinely was like, oh my god. Like, at one point, I really was worrying. So I got interrupted. Like I was saying, there was moments where I genuinely thought some of our characters were going to pop their clogs at one point. I was just, it was so intense. It's a chunky book, but I can tell you now, the whole series reads so fast that it just reads so fast that it doesn't matter how big the book. Like, the audiobook was amazing, and I'm just going to put it out there, I absolutely love Aiden, the AI. Like, I genuinely really like him. I know he's not a him, he's a AI, but I just felt for the AI. Like, he actually had feelings, and I just, yeah, I just couldn't help but loving the AI. It was an absolute amazing series. I certainly am going to start getting into sci-fi. I think sci-fi might start to be a genre that I am quite liking. And I can already tell you now that I want to reread this series again. Like, I love it so much that I am quite happy to reread it again after a month. Like, you know, well, I read I think I read Illuminae in Feb, Gemini in March, this in April, and I quite happily would read all three books back to back this month. But I'm not going to, because I have other books I need to read, and I can't just keep reading this series over and over and again every month. But I already do want to actually pick the series up and read it back to back, so I probably will do soon. I then also read The Devil Wears Black by L.J. Shen. This wasn't on my TBR. Well, half of these books weren't on my TBR. This was on my TBR. Basically, my daughter was off to have a double eye hospital appointment. You're only allowed one person in, and because I was shielding with most of her appointments when she had them, my mum did it. I've let my mum do the appointments just because she's been there with all of the big tests and I haven't, and I quite frankly don't fully, I know what's going on, but I haven't been there to like sort of answer these questions. So I've given my mum like rein, and I've given her permission to be there, but I've also said, like, if there's stuff that because obviously I'm the parent, if there's stuff that I need to say yes or no to, we've done in the sense that she video calls me, I answer. Like, and I don't know why it's not gone back to having, back to normal in hospital, especially the fact that we live all together. I'm like fifth, like I've got 5 vaccinations in me now. We wear our masks. I just don't understand why I can't come with her. But whatever. So we ended up all going there, and me and my dad waited because we were heading out. Because Alice, when she has a drop, she can't go back to school because it's all blurry. She can't see anything. Any type of light really hurts her eyes, and quite frankly, she just falls over like anything because everything's blurry. So she wasn't going to go back to school, so we decided to go somewhere, which I can't tell you because it's a surprise at the moment, but we went somewhere. And so I decided to bring a book with me while we were waiting. I took my Kindle, my tablet as well, to read on my Kindle because I didn't know what to read, but I ended up reading this. I'm so glad I brought a book with me and my Kindle, because we got stuck in a standstill traffic for an hour, to the point that it got that bad that my daughter had, the whole of my family basically had to pee in the bush, and it wasn't just us, literally the whole of the motorway. Nobody moved. People were walking their dogs. There were kids playing rugby. There were people just sat out. There was even a one of those like caravan things that go with you. You know what I mean? Like these people there ended up sitting out and having a coffee and all that. Like it was a surreal moment. So I'm glad I had a book. I read that in like the whole of the one day. It's basically, we follow Maddie, who is in a relationship with her paediatrician boyfriend. Well, they're seeing each other. She's like, quite happy with life, and her ex-boyfriend turns up at her apartment demanding to speak to her, and she's like, what the F? Like, why should I speak to you? Turns out that her ex-boyfriend turned around to his family to say that they were actually engaged, and so they were having an engagement party, and she's like, no, like, we're not. He says, just do this for me, like, let's just do this engagement party. It turns out that his father is dying from cancer, and his father absolutely adores Maddie, the main character, and so he was like, he just wants her to, like, he hasn't got long to live, like, he's got about 3 months max, so basically he just wanted to pretty much have this, like, thing while his father's happy, and then once his father's passed away, it would, like, this fake relationship would end. So she agrees purely because she absolutely adores Chase's father, and she's like, I'm doing it for him. It's enemies to lovers, it's second chance romance, it's a fake engagement, fake relationship at a point, but it's very clear that there is some flirting tension there. It's clear that they both fancy each other, and how it ended up playing out, it was brilliant. Chase's like brother, well, it's not his brother, so Chase has got like a brother, but it's actually a cousin, but the whole family's adopted him like a brother. He's an absolute prick, and his wife is absolutely horrendous, and everything. Oh, it was just the most easy, fun time book, and I had an absolute blast with it. And it's a book that was kindly gifted to me. Someone gifted it to me. It wasn't, I don't even think it was on my Amazon wish list. It was like a sort of book box swap thing, and it was one of their favourite books. So they ended up giving it to me to say, look, it's my favourite book. I know it's not on your wish list, but I think you'll love it. And I was just like, I was a bit on the fence because I thought, well, I'm not really into romance. But I do have my moments when I am, and you probably can tell from the end of this April going into May, all I want to read is romance. So this was fantastic, and I'm so glad it was gifted to me, because I probably wouldn't have bought it for myself, and I'm quite glad I did. I read A Hating Game by Sally Thorne purely because I wanted to carry on with the romance theme since I finished The Devil Wears Black. 5 stars, loved it. I actually watched the movie before the book, and I loved the movie. It's just why I bought the book, because I wanted to see what it compared. Very little difference from the book to the movie, just little tiny things that were changed. Love the book, love the movie. I think I prefer the ending in the movie to the ending in the book, but yeah. And then I also read the Heartstopper books. So with Realm of Font, we had a 24-hour peace talks, and the amount of books you read in those 24-hour things gave you 10 points. It could either be plus 10 points, minus 10 points, up to you which one you want. So I read these 4 books, so I had 10 points just for basically reading books, so that was 40 points here, and I think I had, for prompts, I then managed to do 10 points for each book prompts wise in the actual Realm of Font like prompts thing. So I managed in that 48-hour thing to manage to accumulate 80 points. So that was brilliant. This is a reread for me. I wanted to reread them anyway before the TV series came, so I wanted just to reread them for that. Absolutely love these. Easy 5 stars. They were 5 stars before. Reread, still 5 stars. And the TV series is bloody excellent. I cried because I just loved it so much, and I hope they're going to do more than one season. So that's all the 18 books I read. Generally a good month in regards to like how many 5 stars I got and the enjoyment of books, but it didn't go to plan like I had envisioned for April. May, as you have saw my TBR because that came out before, I am sort of mood reading. I am participating in readathons, but those readathons I actually thankfully can mood read. So I'm just going with the flow of what I feel. At the moment, I am sort of very much into reading my romance or fantasy romance in that sense. So it might be a romance month, and I'm gonna go with it because if that's the mood I'm in, that's the mood I'm in. But hopefully better month, and hopefully I'm hoping for my 12 book challenge it's not going to be a flop, because the last 2 I've hated, and I think with them they've put me in a bit of a slump. So I'm hoping the 12 book challenge that I have, which is The House in the Cerulean Sea, I'm hoping I love so much, because at the moment it seems to be going downhill with the 12 book challenge. But yeah, that's the 18 books. Thank you for watching. Let me know if you've read any of these books and what your thoughts were. Thank you for getting this far. Take care of yourselves and I'll see you again soon. Bye.